Okay, guys, one more video for you. And that is a really fun one. What is the point of this class? So, this is sort of me just giving you an overview of what I hope you get from this course and what my goal is and how I structured it. And I like to call this short video Making History Meaningful because that's the end goal that I pursue. Right, so there's a difference between college history and high school history, and probably the way that you've learned it. In high school history, one of the major differences is oftentimes students are just asked to memorize a lot of facts without it ever being presented why they're learning those things. So, one of the common complaints I get from students is they just have to memorize a lot of names and dates. In addition to this, the curriculum is also tended to be dictated by the school board, so there's a lot of emphasis on good citizenship and understanding how the government works, but it tends to be a more narrow focus on history. You don't study as much as the bad stuff. And the end result of this type of learning is that very often it seems like history is boring and that there's very little connection or relevancy made to the student. Now, some of you may have had awesome history professors where you had a much different experience, but this is one of my criticisms about how high school history has been taught in the past, and it's how I learned history when I was in high school. In contrast, college history is different. One of the things that we focus on a lot is connecting the past to present. History doesn't happen in a vacuum. The things that happened 500 years ago are still affecting us today. So we work really hard in this class to connect the past that we're studying about to the present and understand how it influenced where we are today. In addition to this, in college, professors have something that's called academic freedom. So we're allowed to explore controversial topics. We don't have a curriculum that's set in stone or dictated to us. So as a result of that, we can deal with some of the harder issues that happen in history without fear of losing our jobs as a result of it. And finally, one other aspect to college history that I think is particularly exciting is that the student is actually doing the analysis. So, we're going to talk a little bit about active learning. You guys, instead of me just telling you about a time period, you're going to be analyzing it. You're going to be interpreting historical facts. And you're going to see firsthand what it's like to actually be a historian. So, that is our focus. There's a lot of writing in this class, but it's mostly writing and interpreting history, right? So we're going to do this in a couple different ways. There are participation activities that you will have to do each week that are based on unit materials. And these are going to consist of reading and interpreting primary documents, pretending like you're a person from the time period that we're studying and writing from their perspective. So these are going to be pretty active learning based, asking you to put yourself in that situation or to analyze and interpret it like a historian. In addition to this, we're going to have in class discussions, right? So we're going to deal with historical questions or debates, and you're going to talk about it with your classmates. So you're going to choose a stance and support it. And then finally, with my final project, I asked students to analyze themselves and how they've learned, and to prove in a historical essay that you understood a topic and why it should be learned and studied. Right? So that's sort of like your final culmination of everything that we've done. So online classes require a little bit more from you than an on-campus class would. It requires your participation, right? So in an on-campus class, you might be able to get by sitting in the back of the classroom and not participating. But in an online class, there's nobody else to speak up for you, right? So you have to participate. You have to engage the materials. So if anything is ever confusing to you, if something I've phrased in the directions isn't quite making sense, please ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Send me an email. I love getting those questions because it proves to me that you want to do well in the course, and I'm happy to help. So we're going to be looking at history through a couple different lenses, right? Historians pay attention to something called primary sources. It's firsthand information from the time period that you're studying. So this can be documents, letters, government papers, right? So these are written words from the time period. And we're going to be using our document reader, Reading the American Past, to really get this. Now you have the option of either buying this text in paper format, which is available in the bookstore, or you can use the electronic ebook that I've made available in this course as well. Right, so if you buy the ebook, this document reader is already included in there, and I will set it aside and pull out documents for you to read each week. If not, if you decide to do the paper copy, you will just have to look up these documents, which they will be clearly identified in our course overview and directions. In addition to primary sources, historians will also evaluate what other historians have said about a time period. And these are called secondary sources. So it's secondhand information about the time period. So our secondary source this semester is our textbook, The American Promise. So this is the Concise History, 6th edition, volume 2, right? So there's an older edition of this textbook. So you want to make sure so that the page numbers match up that you use this version, the 6th edition. If you have an older textbook, it should still probably be okay, but your page numbers might not match up exactly. And since we don't go by chapter by chapter, this can be a little confusing. Right, so again, this is also available in ebook, and I'll make those assignments available to you in the unit overview and directions. So hopefully the end result is that this class will be a much more enjoyable experience for you. If you don't like history, you can let me know in the opening introduction discussion. But if you do like history, let me know too, and hopefully this will be a fun class.